Whilst many people are familiar with my social work theory cards, less people use the reflective practice prompt cards. And if I'm honest, in my own practice, I use the reflective practice cards more than I use the theory cards. You can probably tell because this is my box that I use in practice, and it's very tatty, full of marks. I use it, I carry it around with me constantly when I'm working with students on training. I use them almost daily. And a few people have asked me, well, what's the difference and what's the point of these cards? Now, these cards are quite different, not only in look because they're full colour, but also in terms of use. So in the set of cards, there is a booklet which has loads of different ideas about how the cards can be used, but I'm just going to tell you about a few of the ways in which I use the reflective practice cards. So there's 52 cards. I always make a joke that there's basically one for each week of the year, but there's 52 cards and they go through a whole range of different things. So the cards right at the beginning, the first few cards are about what's reflection and what's critical reflection and why is it important. And then there's a whole raft of cards that are specific models of reflection. So there's a range of them. I've just pulled out a few here, just in terms of separating them out a little bit. So you've got lots of different models of reflection, from standard ones like Gibbs and Kolb to ones that are less commonly used but I think are really valuable, like Greenaway and Corsican and Vassilos. There's some really useful models here. There's the Big Six, which is a different film about. So there's a whole range of different models. Now the reason they're done like this is basically there is a visual on one side and then a verbal explanation on the other side. So in supervision, for example, I would just pop one of these out onto the table, and so it gives the person something to look at and we would work through that particular model. In working with a student, one thing that I find is really powerful is we'll be talking about a particular incident and we want to reflect on that. And I'll use two different cards. So we might use, say, Gibbs, because that's one that often they've learnt at university and they're familiar with. And then I might throw in the reflective onion or a Greenaway. And we'll talk about the same incident, but use two different models. And what you find is you get a completely different reflection coming out of that conversation. And that can help us to begin to understand which models of reflection are useful for us. That's something actually that students themselves can do. So if you're a student and you're needing to write a reflective account, these cards are really good at prompting you. You know, when you're sitting around for ages procrastinating about this assignment, you end up washing the kitchen windows instead of doing the reflective assignment. Well, get these cards out. Just use these almost to think through the different questions on the different cards. And as you do that, it's going to really prompt your thinking for your reflective writing. So you could use the different models of reflection. That's one of the things that you could do with them. Alongside of the more traditional models of reflection, there's also a number of models that have been created by practitioners, you know, the Great Social Work Bake Off and the weather model, which people are now really familiar with. I love the Power Prism because that's a really good model of critical reflection. Now, these are models which have been developed by students or by practitioners, and there are also in the pack a couple of blank cards so that you might develop your own model of reflection and add that in. That could provide evidence, if you're a student, of PCF Domain 9 leadership, creating something, but it also provides evidence of critical reflection because you've developed a model of reflection. So that's another thing that you could do in terms of models of reflection. Some of the cards are simply different sets of questions around reflection. So these could be used in supervision or could be used when you're on your own to think through different models of reflection, different questions around reflection. They're called reflective practice prompt cards, and these questions really are about prompting your thinking, whether that's for yourself or whether you're doing that with a colleague or you're using them in a group supervision. So there's a whole range of different prompts that just use questions. Some of the cards help us to think about different themes and thoughts around reflection. So one of the cards is all about how to reflect on feedback that you've received and the importance of feedback in terms of reflection. And there's quite a lot of information there. Now, I know that students are very often asked to write a brief reflection about feedback they've received, and loads of students have been in touch with me and said this card has been really helpful for that. So there's lots of different cards around how we reflect on really important concepts in social work like hope and empathy. There's cards that help us to reflect on satisfactions and so on, and concepts. There's also a range of cards that demonstrate how we might use different concepts in social work that are not models of reflection, but we could use them as models of reflection. So we might be able to use eco maps in thinking about our reflective support networks, for example. We might be able to use the concept of emotional intelligence to reflect. So there's a whole range of different cards. And the booklet does suggest things that you might want to do. The booklet gives you ideas on how to match different models of reflection to different people's learning styles. The booklet gives you advice on how to deepen your reflection. It talks about how to improve reflective writing. It goes through aspects of knowledge and skills and values around reflective practice and how to use those prompt cards. So I think just one thing that I would say is the reflective practice prompt cards are very different to the theory cards, but offer a lot of different suggestions, different ideas, things that you could use either as originally, and they were designed for practice educators, because all of these things that I come up with are tools that I've developed over a long period of time as a practice educator. So I developed my own set of reflective practice prompt cards that I used in supervision for a number of years, and then I developed those into a set that others could use. But as I was developing them, I realised that the students that I was working with found them really useful for themselves. So this set has been written for dual purpose. They've been written so that practice educators and supervisors could use them in supervision. Equally, team managers can use them to promote reflective supervision or group reflection, and trainers can use them to promote reflection and reflective practice. But equally, students find them very helpful at prompting their reflective thinking. Just take a couple of cards, take a couple of very different cards, work through the same scenario using a couple of different cards. You will be amazed by how much your reflective writing can really be improved by doing that. So I was asked to do that, just talk through what are the reflective cards, how are they different to the theory cards. It's always the best way of getting hold of anything. If people did want to get hold of a set of reflective cards, is from my website. I'll put a link at the end of the film. I hope you find them useful.